I'd like to present my learning journey as it relates to technology. I'm going to talk about technology as it relates to both learning as well as teaching. It's not going to be a complete timeline of every single thing that's happened with technology through the years of my life. I'm going to focus on some specific technological breakthroughs and things that were impactful in my life on either side. I'll try to weave through both learning and teaching as it applies along the way. When I was young, there was not a lot of technology. As a matter of fact, cable did not exist in many places. When it did exist, it was pretty much in its infancy. My house, we had three channels, CBS, ABC, and NBC, like a lot of places. We really didn't watch a lot of TV. I spent a lot of time outside, a lot of time playing, spent a lot of time with my brother playing sports. So we really didn't just have the TV on for noise like a lot of people do today. So I spent a lot of time doing things, reading books. I enjoyed reading, but only really for stories. I didn't really do a lot of reading for learning necessarily. This would have been a typical classroom when I was in elementary school. Chalkboard, teacher, direct instruction, some projects and art along the way, but probably not a whole lot of other things. Didn't really watch a lot of movies. When we did, it was kind of the reel-to-reel, some film strips. That was the extent of the technology and then learning in my day. I do remember being in fourth grade, and for the first time we had a computer in my classroom. It was a Texas Instruments computer, a lot like this. I was pretty good in school, and I was one of the first ones done with my work most of the time, and we were on a first-come, first-served basis. I was pretty intrigued by the computer, so I spent a lot of time on it. We really didn't do a whole lot with it, though. Maybe played a few games, did some basic programming where I could tell the computer to do a couple things, and it would follow those instructions, but that was about the extent of it. Most students really didn't get an opportunity to do anything with it. Really, my first computer at home was a Commodore 64, just like the one you see here. I had it in elementary up through middle school. I was at my home. We played some games on it. We really didn't do anything productive with it. We hooked it up to the TV a few times so we could look at some things on the television, did some basic programming, a few more games than we had in the classroom a couple years earlier. But again, it really wasn't productive. It really had no impact on my learning other than it got me really excited about computers. And every time a new computer came out, I was more and more intrigued by it and wanted to know about it, but I didn't really do a whole lot with them at that. When I was in high school and then even into college, I really used paper and pencil. That's how I wrote my papers. I did typewriter, electronic typewriter, and when I was in college, I started typing papers after I wrote them. That was really my process. I would write it all out by hand, then I would stick it in a typewriter. Look at it, stick it in a typewriter, and go. I could not type and think about it as I went. That just wasn't the way my brain worked. I had to write it all out, edit it. I will say I was pretty good at typing, so I was able to type papers for other people, and I made some money, and I ate a lot of pizza in college as a result of that, so I appreciate them not being able to type. But it was right at the end of my years where I was able to start thinking and typing at the same time. So that was definitely a transfer there. There was no technology used in the classroom, really. Then I went and started teaching. When I taught, I went into a classroom, and my first year in the classroom, I had no computer at all. There were very few computers on the campus, so I walked around campus and I started finding the Apple IIe computers that were sitting around. Those are the ones on the left. These computers were around campus, but nobody used them, so I started bringing them into my classroom. I brought one in, I brought another one in, started using them. I actually used Print Shop, used AppleWorks, and started using them for some productive things beyond just playing games. There were also some educational games. I actually used it to make some thank you cards for people that had made me Christmas gifts or given me Christmas gifts as a teacher. By the end of that first year, I had 5 or 6 Apple IIe computers in my room. My next year of teaching, I brought some more computers in. And by the end of my second year of teaching, I had a whole row of computers. I had about 10 computers in my classroom. By my third year of teaching, I had 20 computers in my classroom. The Apple II GS computer you see on the right is just like one I had in my room. And I was able to find a program for about $200 that you could put a card in that program and put a card in that computer, put a card in all the other computers and network together. And I actually created the first network we had on campus in my classroom. 20 computers. The Apple II GS was kind of the server, the brain of it. and all the computers were networked together. They all shared programs. You could actually chat and talk to each other. This was about 1996. The next year they took that, added a few computers, moved it into another room, and it actually became the first computer lab at our school that started in my classroom. Definitely changed the way things went in my room. Kids were very excited about it. They were always going back and doing the programs. It wasn't just something to do when they were done with their work. It was something that we used actually in the learning process, and kids could, but they could also create some work on it. Around then, the internet really started taking off. CompuServe was what I had when I first started. I used that for internet, for email, chatting, that sort of thing, looking up basic information, but it was just the beginning of the whole internet explosion. Classroom, the projector really made a big impact, because when I was able to get a projector and put it in there, now all of a sudden I could have presentations and put them up on the board, and we would talk about those, but it really changed how I taught, and it moved away from some of the lecture. I think the projector also had an impact on worship services in churches, because now people were looking up at the words instead of looking in a hymnal where they had music, and even if they couldn't read music, they could see the notes go up and down. So I think that had an impact on music as well, because now people are looking at words, listening to music, and not necessarily trying to read it. When I started grad school, I had really not much technology in the learning process. Now writing papers, I wrote them all on a laptop. I looked up all the information online, but there was nothing in the learning process that had to do with technology other than a projector. So there was a slight shift, but not a major shift. Over the years, we've incorporated iPads into our school. We have one-to-one iPads. And with that comes a shift in teaching. When it's done correctly, there's collaborative learning, there's project-based learning, there's inquiry going on. There are some tasks that are just done quicker on an iPad, so it saved time so that different tasks could be done that maybe you didn't have time to before. And for true technology learning to take place, you need to go from substitution, where you're just taking away this, maybe taking notes and doing it on an iPad, that's just substitution, to moving up this chart where you're actually redefining how the learning process takes place. And that's something that happens over time, but that's a transformational change that takes place in how you teach. Now, as a student in this program, it's an online program. It's something different than I've ever done before. And you can see all the things that take place as part of online learning. But this is different than any of the learning I've had to do before, where now I'm reading it, I'm watching videos, and technology is a big part of the learning process. To how I function today, I use all these devices on a daily basis, through research, through my calendar, email, taking notes in meetings, productivity, webinars, all the things I do really take place all around technology on a daily basis. And I don't go very long in my day without using technology in some way. And it's important to make sure this doesn't take the place of conversations with people.